Coming up on Cracking Quantum.
A third of all of the UK funding for quantum has come to Scotland. So when you take that we're 8% of the population, we really are punching above our weight. So it's actually estimated that about 80 to 90% of quantum technologies are actually based on photonics. If you go right back to optics, it's been established in Scotland for well over 100 years. I think when you historically look at Scotland, where we are, we're a country of innovators.
My name's Ash Lyons. Join me as I try and figure out what quantum science is really all about. Welcome to Cracking Quantum. But you're talking about the Easter weekend,
yeah,
and what you're up to.
Yeah.
What was it? What were you doing?
Mostly walking and cycling, getting a good sort of 9 miles under my soles every day.
Good.
And maybe 10, 13 miles cycling.
I don't do that
every other day as well. So yeah,
nearly enough. I'm really bad for just taking any spare time I have and sitting on my backside doing nothing. I used to do way more, but these days it's hard to get out there a little bit.
I'm doing a charity walk in August, so I need to, although I tend to do a marathon length charity walk most years, but this year's is a bit more elevation than usual. So just need to get the miles under the feet.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I used to cycle into work every day, and this is when I was still living in Glasgow. And now I'm a little bit further out. It's 17, 18 miles from here. So it's a little bit too far to be cycling every day, which means I'm missing it a little bit. I need to find other ways of getting exercise. Having dogs is keeping me walking a little bit, but not enough as it should be.
Oh dear, what sort of dogs have you got?
Cavapoos.
All right, cool.
So both small and easy-ish to look after. My wife is really allergic to pretty much anything and everything.
Right, okay.
So we needed a breed that was hypoallergenic. So thank you for joining me. I'm here with Dr. Alison McLeod from Technology Scotland. Thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you.
As we were just saying before, I wanted to take the opportunity to talk a little bit about the general environment for quantum in Scotland, because I've been talking to a few academics so far, and of course, quantum science and technology in Scotland is way more than just that. There's loads of companies starting to pop up who are really interested in quantum technologies. So I thought, perfect person to talk to is Alison from Technology Scotland. Maybe we should start with, can you give us an overview of who Technology Scotland are and what they do?
Sure. So Technology Scotland are the representative body for all enabling or critical technologies within Scotland. Under the umbrella of Technology Scotland, if you like, we've got 3 dedicated networks. Product Design Scotland, Mobility as a Service Scotland, and then there's Photonics Scotland, which has been around for 30 plus years, which is the one that I'm the director of. So we're basically here to support the whole community who are developing technologies to deliver innovations in markets from healthcare to communications and manufacturing to mobility. So we do this through various means, so like networking, collaboration, stakeholder engagement, lobbying, thought leadership. We do a lot of representing industry interests to government. We promote the Scottish technology capabilities within the UK and internationally. We try and influence policy at both Scottish and UK government levels. We support the community through events, special interest groups. We have a quantum technologies one, workshops and forums, and we sort of do a lot of interfacing to sort of key national and international stakeholders.
Yeah, loads of activities.
Lots of activities, yeah.
That must keep you really busy.
It does. We have about 130 members across the board at Technology Scotland, and probably about 60 of those are photonics focused in particular.
So by members, you mean these are companies who are already working within the sector and you're kind of gathering everybody together?
Yes, and it can be anybody from single person, like sole traders, if you like, to massive companies who are involved with the membership as well, and also universities and hard to use as well.
How big do the companies get, just to get an idea of scale here?
So the biggest companies that we have would be classed as large companies. They would be sort of like on the multi-million pound, 500 plus employees.
Yeah.
They are big, and some of them are big international companies as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that have maybe headquartered elsewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any standout names there that people would maybe recognize?
Well, Leonardo and Thales would be the two sort of biggest ones that would be within the sector. And then Coherent, obviously, is a very big name within the photonics industry itself. And Coherent laser capability is actually all headquartered from Glasgow now.
Yeah. So for those people that wouldn't know, Coherent is a massive laser manufacturer.
Correct.
So you mentioned that you're running Photonics Scotland as part of this. And let's say that the quantum side is a special interest group within that. So in other words, you've got the quantum is a little bit, and then photonics is the more umbrella term that Technology Scotland have, and then the whole of Technology Scotland.
Absolutely.
So let's start with what is photonics, because this is probably a word that's unfamiliar to a lot of people.
Absolutely. And so photonics, to wind it right back, it's the science and technology of generating, manipulating, and detecting light. And if you sort of think that the unit of light is a photon, you can kind of make an analogy with electronics. So if you think electronics uses electrons, photonics uses photons to kind of do the same sort of things. And it's used in like a massive range of applications. It underpins loads of aspects of everyday modern life. From communication networks, so like the internet wouldn't work without photonics, and all the optical fibers that are needed for it. Your mobile phone, so the screen is manufactured using photonic processes. The camera all uses photonics. And then there's many medical devices that use images and things as well. Really is truly across the board in everything you do from the moment you wake up in the morning. And actually it's classed as one of the key enabling technologies of the 21st century.
Yeah, I guess people really have an understanding broadly of like what electronics is and where it sits within our everyday life, but not so much photonics, and it's crucial.
Absolutely, and I think this is actually one of the downsides of photonics, if you like, because it is so ubiquitous in absolutely everything that we do. It's hard to put it into what they class as a vertical market. So because it's kind of like across the board in everything, it kind of goes as this unseen, hidden technology that just kind of underpins so many things that we do.
Yeah, like you can always find lots of little examples of where photonics is, and like individually they might not sound that important. Like you think about how your TV remote connects with the TV, that's photonics.
Absolutely.
But that seems like one tiny little thing, but really it's everywhere. That's the reality.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think people forget about all the areas that it's used. And there's quite an interesting video. I'm trying to remember who did it. I think it might have been an SPIE video from years ago, and it was what your day would look like now without photonics, and it's actually quite funny. Like even from like an old style alarm clock in the morning because your mobile phone wouldn't exist for it to go off, sort of thing. So yeah.
I'm definitely going to find that video later. That sounds really interesting. So coming back to quantum, why does in your case, a quantum special interest group, so how Technology Scotland sees quantum, why does that fit within the photonics section? Okay. What's the connection between quantum and photonics?
Yeah. So it's actually estimated that about 80 to 90% of quantum technologies are actually based on photonics. So it's closely intertwined, or you could say entangled, with quantum. It really does play a crucial role in various quantum technologies, since photons can be used to encode and transmit quantum information. So qubits, which are the fundamental units of quantum information, photons can be used as qubits. The quantum properties of photons are used to represent quantum states. So for example, the polarization state of a photon, that's a whole other conversation, we get into polarization, that can be used to represent quantum states. They're essential for quantum communications to establish secure channels for transmission. So Some people might have heard of quantum key distribution, when you have Alice and Bob talking to each other and you've got Eve who's trying to eavesdrop on them. And the properties of the photons are actually used massively in quantum key distribution to actually make those secure networks. In sensing and metrology in quantum, photonics basically has enabled the development of highly sensitive quantum sensors, including magnetometers, and they're used to measure really weak magnetic fields. And they're used in applications such as medical imaging and navigation and geological exploration. So you can sort of find voids and see through walls and round corners without actually looking, which is always quite interesting. And then it's also a key enabling technology for quantum computing, particularly with the development of photonic integrated circuits now, which are going to facilitate much smaller and faster and more efficient quantum computers.
There's a huge amount there to start and unpack. Some of it is definitely areas that I've already interviewed someone on, and I would definitely suggest people go back and have a little bit of a closer look at some of the other podcasts that I've done so far. Particularly, you mentioned the magnetometers. I did an episode on that not too long ago. Things like quantum key distribution are coming up. Definitely, I'm going to find someone good to talk to about QKD because it's a huge area within quantum. What I'm really getting from what you're saying is that if we think about the everyday life and the way in which we use photonics is kind of ingrained in everything. Whereas within the quantum space, it's almost as though photonics is the starting point, and then a lot of quantum is built upon photonics.
Absolutely.
It inherently needs photonics in order to work.
Yeah. I mean, I think there is just so much. I've seen various people within the quantum sector sort of standing up and quoting figures of how much they think is based on it, and the highest one I've heard is kind of 90%. So it's really is one of the crucial building blocks for all the quantum technologies to succeed.
You definitely don't have to convince me because, as you probably know, I'm from an optics background, so everything I do is some way using photonics anyway. Yeah. But I'm not an exception. I'm more the rule. There's so many people who are just using photonics in some shape or form.
Yeah.
Kind of connected to that, I guess, but what we're seeing is that there's a lot of really strong quantum research and innovation going on in Scotland. Why is this? Is this because the photonics already existed and this is what we're kind of building on?
Yeah, so it does. Scotland's got a fantastically thriving ecosystem when it comes to this, and it's really all based on the really strong academic base that we have. So when you actually think in Scotland, you have some of the world-leading universities here, and they're all involved in quantum somewhere in some of the research that they're doing. We have got fantastic research organisations here, so like Fraunhofer do a lot of work in quantum as well. And then, like you said, the well-established photonics sector, which has been around for, if you go right back to optics, it's been established in Scotland for well over 100 years when you go back to Barnstroud. So if you couple that together with all of Scotland's other strengths in sort of like key markets and early adopter markets like healthcare and space, renewables and financial services, then it really does give this fantastic opportunity for Scotland to kind of really grasp the global opportunity for quantum. And that's one of the reasons why it's almost like a perfect storm of things that you can do. And the other thing that makes Scotland really strong is that we're actually a true cluster. And I say that in meaning that we have a true close geographical link. I mean, Glasgow, Edinburgh, an hour apart if it's bad traffic. We've got that robust academic base. We've got the industry base. We have the RTOs. And that is what's kind of great and really focuses people's attention. And I think a lot of people might think that, is there lots of competition? Yes, there is lots of competition, but there's also lots of collaboration and innovation, and people aren't scared to work together. And it's actually proven that true clusters will actually encourage collaboration and innovation, and they sort of provide that long-term growth and stability view. But yeah, I think we're really strong in quantum because of the well-established photonics sector that was here in the first place. And I guess some companies might be seen as a little bit less risky to possibly pivot into doing something in quantum rather than, establish a whole new company that's specifically working on quantum if it's only one area of your business that's going towards it as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's always going to be some element of risk involved in starting to explore something that's a little bit newer in the grand scheme of things like quantum.
Absolutely.
And even, I think, like you said, in this area, we've got a really strong background in optics going back 100 years. Even this is kind of reinforced by, I think, the geography that we have. It's, for those people who are unfamiliar with the Scottish geography, Glasgow and Edinburgh are really, like you said, just about an hour apart. Yeah. So that kind of opens you up. You've got the two biggest cities in Scotland right next to each other, more or less. So naturally, there starts to be a lot of development in this area.
Absolutely, and I think when you historically look at Scotland, where we are, we're a country of innovators. Let's face it. When you look back at the amount of inventions that have come out of Scotland or from Scottish people, it's quite incredible, really. Plus, I think people quite like working with us because we're quite friendly.
I've definitely found that. Obviously, I'm not Scottish myself, but I've been here long enough, and my wife is Scottish, so that's probably a good benchmark to take.
Yeah,
I like Scottish people. This
is a good room. I'm not actually Scottish. The full confessions, I'm not Scottish either, but I've been here for nearly 31 years now. So, but originally from Northern Ireland, so I'll take it as a home anyway.
Yeah, I'm gradually coming there. I'm coming up to half my life in Scotland.
I was going to say one thing, actually. It's probably worth mentioning as well here. So the other things that sort of are making the Scottish community quite strong as well. So the UK quantum hubs, when you look at them, 2 of the 5 hubs are actually led from Scottish universities. One's kind of half led between Glasgow and Birmingham. But all 5 hubs, the Scottish universities are involved in all of them. So I think it's quite obvious that the Scottish sector is seen as being very strong in this. And then we've also got things like the quantum computing application cluster, the quantum arc, obviously, as well. And then we have another sort of tool in our belt now as well. So we have Glentanglement, which is Scotland's Quantum Valley, and it's a little bit of a marketing tool, shall we say. And it's got more than 30 sort of key organisations listed within there that are all sort of like active in the quantum technology sector as well. So that's good from our point of view, that we can go out to the rest of the world and go, look, guys, we're great. Come and work with us.
Yeah. With a bottle of whiskey, was that right as well?
Well, there is a Glentanglement whiskey, yes.
So do you have any rough feel? It's okay if you don't have numbers, but we talked about obviously how amazing quantum is in Scotland. Do you have any kind of feel about how that compares to the rest of the UK or internationally? Because it's one thing to say we've got all of this stuff here, but really Scotland is punching above its weight in terms of quantum research.
Yeah, I mean, the one number I can remember off the top of my head is about 1/3 of all of the UK funding for quantum has come to Scotland. So when you take that we're 8% of the population, we really are punching above our weight. And I think even just on general sort of like research, not specifically quantum, I think it's something like 20 to 25% of that tends to come to Scotland from UK funding. So when you take that, we really are quite an innovative nation.
Yeah, this is definitely true. And obviously, like the amount of funding that's coming away is a good metric, because it's not just about how good we are at attracting the money. Well, that's a big part of it, but all of that comes from the previous history of what Scotland has produced.
Yeah.
In other words, we wouldn't be getting that money if we weren't giving something to the community that was useful.
Absolutely, and I think again it comes back to that. I think historically, the Scottish sector has been good to collaborate with as well. And again, I think a lot of that comes back to that we're quite a friendly bunch.
And that you kind of touched on some of the quantum technologies that are starting to develop, but are there any in particular to you that are going to be big players in within industry, or we're going to see lots of companies doing a specific thing within Scotland?
It's a really difficult question at the minute, because obviously with the quantum technologies, they're kind of at that point where there's not massive amount of commercialization yet. But I think the front runners we can kind of see within Scotland are kind of all probably going to fall within the sensing and imaging side of things. And the photonics that are kind of used to uphold the rest of the sector, shall we say. So the actual lasers and laser systems that are used in a lot of quantum technologies, we've got like great pedigree in those. And then things like magnetometers that we mentioned earlier, SPADs, so single photon avalanche detectors, they're quite a big thing for Scotland as well. So again, that sort of sensing and imaging, also position, navigation and timing. So NPL have actually put one of their timing nodes at the University of Strathclyde as well. So all these things kind of all work together from that point of view.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And again, there's loads there, and all of these technologies are kind of inherently quite different, although they're all in some way relying on quantum mechanics at their core. The point that you made about a lot of it is going to be along the sensing and imaging domain. This is something that actually I sometimes struggle with getting across to people, because when you start talking to someone about quantum, they usually jump to, I'm really excited about quantum computing or something like that. But the sensing and imaging part is huge, and it's maybe something that people don't realize as much. And I think the reason is what you get coming out of the sensing and imaging domain is lots of little advancements rather than that big quantum computer that's going to solve XYZ problems. It's all of these tiny little devices that are really reliant on quantum technology somehow that you could then embed into the NHS to be useful, for example. Absolutely.
And I think, as you say, people, you say quantum, they automatically think computing. And quantum computing, I mean, when they get it properly sussed and everything else and up to like the needed amount of qubits and everything else, it'll be great. But realistically, on a day-to-day, what's going to affect the majority of the public most, it is going to be the sensing and imaging. It's going to be the new, medical devices. It's going to be, the discovery of certain. It's going to be your local council not having to dig up the road in 17 places to find that pipe. They'll be able to actually use, quantum imaging to kind of go, it's there. That's where we need to dig. These are the sort of things that are actually going to affect people a bit more, I think, on a day-to-day basis. And they're actually going to be the products, in my opinion, that are commercialized first. Mm-hmm. Because I mean, how often have we heard that a quantum computer is 10 years away?
Yeah.
How many years I've been hearing that. Whereas we are starting to see some of these imaging products actually appearing on market now.
Yeah, and things like laser technologies, like I said, we've got big companies in Scotland mm-hmm. developing these, but there are devices that, in the grand scheme of things, are not too hard to actually make with our current technologies. So you mentioned these single photon avalanche detectors, mm-hmm. these SPADs, and this is something that's really developed quite strongly within Scotland. These you can make using standard semiconductor fabrication processes. Mm-hmm. So you can make them relatively cheap right now, like to the point where there are already some models of smartphones that have some of these SPADs integrated already. Yeah. And again, people probably don't realize this, that the sensor that shuts off the screen when you put the phone to your face, in some models, that's actually a single photon detector.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, they are an area that really is quite significant for Scotland now, I would say. There are at least 2 companies that specialise in them, and there are other companies who sort of look at them as well. So, yeah, really important.
And again, I should probably say I'm completely biased with this, because these are the type of devices that I use all the time, and I sit firmly within the imaging and sensing part of quantum technologies as a whole. So, of course, I'm going to say it's fantastic. That's what I do. So you mentioned the quantum hubs, and this is something that actually hasn't come up in the podcast episodes I've been doing so far, but it's definitely something that I want to touch on, because mm-hmm. there's such an integral part of quantum research as a whole within the UK. It's a fantastic mechanism for consolidating some of the efforts that are going on within the UK. And the quantum hubs that we have now, they've just started. Yep. They're funded over 5-year periods, but the last 2 times that the quantum hubs have run, which goes back to the very beginning of these quantum hub programs. I mean, Scotland has been there from the start.
Yeah.
And maybe you can say a little bit about the particular areas that these hubs are focused on. That might be quite helpful.
So in the last round of the hubs, we had Quantic, which was based here at the University of Glasgow. That was where it was led from. And that was all to do with imaging. And the latest iteration of that project is actually called QSIT, which again is to do with imaging and sensing. And now it's actually led out of Birmingham, but very much with Glasgow kind of almost as a co-lead. There's a quantum networks hub that is actually led out of Heriot-Watt. And there is a position, navigation and timing hub that is led out of Glasgow. Then there's also a biomedical one.
Yes.
I know that there are several Scottish partners in, and I'm racking my brains to try to remember what the 5th one is. That's terrible.
But what I'm really getting to kind of pick out the areas within quantum that Scotland is really good at. The imaging and sensing, definitely. There's lots of quantum computing activity that is...
Which is what the 5th one will be.
There you go. That's the one.
Which Edinburgh definitely will be involved in, because that's where so much of the quantum computing is based in Scotland.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And the other thing that we mentioned was networks and connectivity. So this comes back to this thing, quantum key distribution. There's a huge area of quantum research that's dedicated towards secure communication. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background, Alison. What is it that you used to do before Technology Scotland?
Sure. So I came over to Scotland and I went to University in St Andrews to do physics. And then when I was doing my degree, I kind of quite liked the idea of working with lasers in the laser lab. So I then went off and did, there's quite an infamous master's that existed in Scotland for a number of years that was shared between St Andrews and Heriot-Watt that was all to do with lasers and optoelectronics devices, or lasers and photonics devices it was called in more recent times. Did that, then went back and did my PhD on optical parametric oscillators, and then worked with organic LEDs and concentric distributed feedback organic lasers. There's a reason you haven't heard of them. They don't work. I basically spent 2 years looking at a little green dot in an orange circle. Doesn't work. Anyway, so after my postdoc, I left university, left academia, and I went and worked in industry for a number of years as an applications engineer. First within the health physics sector, so radiation monitoring, really interesting job. There's not many jobs you get to go and be in the cyclotron vault at Aberdeen in the morning, and then you go to Faslane in the afternoon and get to be in a submarine. It was a fantastic job and really, really interesting. And then I worked with Laser Quantum down in Manchester for a year as well, before I sidestepped out of that and went into European funding for 10 years and basically concentrated on project management of large collaborative projects and proposal writing. And I must admit, I much preferred the project management side of it than the proposal writing side of it, which anybody who has written any amount of proposals will understand.
Yep, everybody hates writing.
Absolutely. But when it's your job, it's like, no. But the project management was great, and that's part of what helped me develop such a great network across the UK and across Europe as well, actually. Because a lot of the projects I managed were all very photonics and engineering focused as well. And then this job came up mid-lockdown, and I decided that it'd be a good idea to change jobs in June 2020, and then started this, which was kind of almost the everything that I had done before kind of all lined up to doing this job. So having the academic insight, having a little bit of sales type experience, and then the sort of the collaborative aspect of it kind of all wound up to this being almost the perfect job for me.
Yeah, great.
Great.
There's really quite a diverse background.
It is a diverse background, but you know, it's good. I like it. It's got to be where I am now, so that's.
One of the things that I do want to kind of highlight is the diversity in the types of job that kind of exist within the sector now, because we think of quantum science and your mind automatically goes to, well, I must be in a university doing research. But of course, it's not just that at all. Do you see that people who are in either working in industry or have jobs such as yours, do you need a specific background in order to do that? Like, do you need a background in photonics and optics, or could you come into it from other sectors? You
could come into it from other sectors. I think there obviously are certain jobs within the sector that you need to have, you know, a certain physics, engineering background for. But there are other jobs that you could be trained, but there are also plenty of other jobs within the sector that don't require necessarily the physics or engineering type background. There's always programming, and you know, there's software requirements that are needed, and then there's all the other functions that go around it. You know, we always need marketing, and so there are a myriad of jobs that go around these things. So it's not always that it's the boffins and the white coats, shall we say, that are doing these jobs. There are lots of opportunities across all levels, and it's looking more and more now at things like apprenticeships and internships, and you know, bringing it back a level, if you like, from the university and PhD education route. I would say there are opportunities across the board.
Yeah, that's great. That's really helpful to hear, I think. Whenever I talk to people about, well, what it's like doing a PhD, I always try and say, well, it kind of feels a bit like doing an apprenticeship. So there's a nice kind of like parallel there where you're learning on the job. It's not like you're sat in a lecture room all the time learning. You're actually in a lab doing the science, and that's how you build experience. So it makes a lot of sense that there are hopefully similar kind of schemes popping up, like apprenticeships, where people can learn as they're doing certain things.
Yeah, and I think it's quite encouraging to see that the skills aspect of the sector is being invested in now more and more as well. So I think that shows a little bit of confidence that government in particular have this on their agenda, and they know that it's something that's quite important.
So when, let's say you're in school or early days of university and you see things pop up about optics, photonics, and quantum, you should definitely be paying attention to these, right? Because there is going to be opportunities within this sector that are constantly growing.
Absolutely, and like I say, with it being one of these key enabling technologies that they talk about, it's something that if you have an expertise in it, I don't think you're ever going to be out of a job. Basically, it's going to be there for many, many years to come, and an industry that's just growing and growing.
Yeah, there's always been this feeling around that word quantum that feels a little bit buzzwordy, and whenever that happens, you kind of get the sense that, well, eventually it's going to die away. People aren't going to be as interested, but I think quantum is one of those special cases when no, that's actually going to stick around for a long time.
Yeah.
And maybe it shifts into leaning more on the photonics expertise that we have, or into some slightly different area. So becomes integrated with computing somehow in the quantum computing side. But it's not one of those things that is just the thing of the moment. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's taken that scariness away from it. So it's, could be classed as, quantum engineering or, something else. I think sometimes when you tag engineering onto something, it suddenly becomes less scientific and more, achievable in people's minds. So yeah, maybe it's just what we call it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And you mentioned having this view of the quantum people or the people in the white coats. I don't wear a white coat. No. I don't think anyone wears a white coat. I don't know what people think scientists look like, but Most of us don't wear white coats.
Unless you're in a clean room and you're full bunny suited up. That's the only time you tend to have another white on.
True. So just to close up, I'm asking everybody this question because I'm getting some really interesting answers and it's quite fun to ask. What's your favourite science fact?
See, I actually thought of two of this. I've got one that is quite photonics based, which is it takes 40,000 years for a photon to get from the core of the sun to the edge of the sun and 8 minutes to get from the sun to Earth. So if the sun goes out, we've got 8 minutes before it all goes wrong.
Well, before we know it's all gone wrong.
Exactly, before the lights go out, realistically. The other one is there's no letter Q in the periodic table.
Huh.
It's the only letter that doesn't appear in the periodic table. And that's in official names of elements in the periodic table, not kind of like holding names. So
yeah, or like maybe it's in some of the old names. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Those are both really interesting. Any idea why light takes so long to get from the center of the sun to the
guessing it's just sheer density of matter to try and get out.
Yeah, I think I've heard that before. It is something like that. Like the photons are always being absorbed and re-emitted or scattered, and it's it just takes.
Imagine how frustrating that is. You know, it's like sitting in the queue of traffic on the M6 somewhere. You finally get past that bottleneck, and it's like, yay, 8 minutes.
That's something that gets mentioned quite a bit as well. Is 8 minutes for light to get from the sun to the Earth. So, like you're saying, let's say the sun explodes or stops working or something. We're going to continue life as normal for 8 minutes, and then all chaos is going to break loose.
Absolutely. Yep. And on that happy note.
Yeah, but perfect thing to end on, I guess. Thank you very much for coming in and talking to me, Alison.
Thank you for having me.
It's been really useful.
Great. Thank you.